Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining today's webinar. Our topic today is password management and public Wi-Fi security. Independent topics, but both really important. My name is Ray Kuhl. I'm CEO of PBSI Technology Solutions. And I want to thank our colleagues and friends at Scroggins Greer who created the envisioned the need for this information and have been actively involved in the planning for these webinars. Partnering with Scroggins Greer is an honor, and we know them, as I'm sure you know them, to be a firm of integrity and excellence. So, welcome. We're going to move quickly. So in this series, our goal is to inform and educate, to help everybody improve knowledge about electronic security, and to provide practical information about if we need to change something, exactly what would we do to improve our security practices in this particular area. So prior to today, we've covered content, and links, by the way, to these recorded webinars will be available to all Scroggins Greer clients. We've covered an overview of the basics of personal security, keeping our PCs and our network safe. We talked about email security practices and some practical ways we can learn to evaluate potentially dangerous emails. Last webinar, we talked about file encryption. How do you do it? Why do you do it? How do you make sure that traffic that's sent primarily through email or stored in the cloud is safe? So today, we're going to talk about one of the most difficult and important topics, and that's password management as well as public Wi-Fi. So why is password management so difficult? Because I don't think I even need to tell you how many of us don't have at least 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 or more passwords and sites where we have registered. How can a human keep track of all that without doing some things that are really dangerous? So most of us revert to doing some things that are dangerous. So today I want to provide some alternatives. Why does password security demand our attention? What are some guidelines? Separately, what are dangers associated with public Wi-Fi, and what can you do about it? How can you be safe when you're in public? So these are not difficult topics today, just important. And then we'll talk about some practical ideas to safely manage passwords. So for those of you not familiar with PBSI, as CEO, I am honored and blessed to know that we have a large staff of folks who've been involved in helping hundreds of clients in the tri-state, Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana for decades. And we have lots and lots of experienced staff, most of whom are long tenured at PBSI. So it's fantastic to work around a group of staff who care about clients and have the experience to deliver what clients need. Our business is security and IT services in general for healthcare, business, professionals, nonprofits. It's from the experience that we gained and have gained, continue to gain every day, that I will communicate today. So for those of you who've attended previous webinars, this one slide is a bit of a repeat, but for context, why do we need protection? So everybody understands that the internet is a dangerous place. It's important to know that many of us, hopefully it's not true, but my guess is that many listening to my voice right now have a PC that is infected and you don't know it. That's not a fear tactic. It's simply expressing the truth that when anybody makes a mistake, and that's not the only way to have a piece of malware installed on your computer, but if something's been downloaded, it could be weeks, months, years ago, their malware does different things, but a frequent technique and an increasingly common technique is keylogging. So keylogging happens when a malware sits on your computer and captures keystrokes, most importantly capturing email or login and password information, which gives the keys to that account to the listener. And they may sit there and listen for years and years without notifying the listener. So this is really directly impacting on passwords. So email addresses are for sale out on the dark web, where you and I don't go, but there is an active exchange of hacks of data, email addresses and associated passwords, credit card numbers, social security numbers, that kind of thing. There is a database of 3.1 billion emails that are available for sale on the dark web, of which 1.2 billion have exposed cracked passwords, meaning If you're one of those, and I am, it's been years and years ago, but many of us are in a situation where we used to do things that we don't do anymore, like use the same password on multiple sites. So even if your password were compromised 20 years ago, it's still there for sale. And the fact that there's a combination of email address and password that's available out there means anybody who has that can try that on Huntington Bank, US Bank, Citi. The idea is we really need to know if our passwords have been hacked, and if so, don't reuse them. Well, I want to say, don't reuse them anyway. One of my main messages today will be change your passwords. I'm going to do a really quick query here, which goes to a bad place on the dark web, and it shows where hacks are most commonly coming from, the number of exposed email addresses. I'm going to do a query, and I'm going to look at PBSI. So this is our secure company, our security experts, and I'm going to look at our domain, pbsinet.com, and I'm going to discern how many of PBSI's email addresses and passwords have been compromised. So there are 50 some. Now, many of these folks have not worked for PBSI for a couple decades in some cases. The point isn't that they were exposed recently. The point is that at some point in time, this email address and this password were used together. So here's a password that's exposed. This password has not been cracked, so it's potentially safe. But the fact is, anybody with a password cracker could turn that into a cracked password with enough time. So that's something to understand. So the columns that are passwords or cracked passwords, these are all combinations of email address and password that at some point in time has been exposed. So what happens when that exposure takes place is that person, that could be me, that could be you, now has to make 100% sure, one, that we've changed that password. So in my case, I changed that password. I haven't used that for decades, but I still know that it's there. I cannot reuse that any place, or I put myself at risk. So hopefully some of you listening are thinking, I still do use the same password I have for a long time, and I really have no idea if it's been exposed. So I want to say, change your passwords. If you want assistance in identifying if your password or those in your firm have been exposed, contact us. We'll provide queries for free and let you know. So if the understanding then is our passwords may have been compromised in the past, I must change them. So change key passwords, and then don't reuse the same password combination. So how frequently do we need to change passwords? This is really a question. Frankly, the idea of frequent change isn't as important as that the passwords we use are different from each other, and that if there's any sense of compromise, that we change passwords. So when you heard that LinkedIn was compromised, or you heard that Anthem or JCPenney or the Target or whoever you hear, if you have an account with them, you must immediately change your password and take note that it's likely that that email and password combination you used on that site is forever compromised and will be for sale, and you can never use that combination again. So you can use normal or easy passwords on sites that are not financially material. So if you have an account, let me just say, with a site that does architectural plans, you never put a credit card number in, use an easy password. You're not really putting anything at risk, but don't use that same easy password on your bank login account. So how do you know what a password is secure? The most common answer you hear from security experts is length means everything. I pay attention. I listen to other security webinars. I do a lot of reading. Just yesterday, I was in a webinar with a high-level security expert who's worked for the government and Microsoft and lots of experience. And they're familiar with the process of cracking passwords, and made the comment that anybody who has an 8-character password, that can be cracked within half an hour. 12 characters, they can crack it within a day. A password can be cracked by a free password cracker giving time and proximity. So the longer the password, I don't know what the number would be that would take it weeks, but once you get to 15 or more characters, you're plenty safe. So change your passwords, make sure you're not using the same passwords. Another key, don't share passwords that you use at work and home. So whatever you've done in the past, the idea here is you have an important role in protecting your coworkers and your organization. And if you are using easy to guess or repeatable passwords at home, don't do that at work and vice versa. You don't want a mistake made on one side to compromise the other. And wherever you store credit card or financial information, make sure your password is unique. So I'm going to give an idea of what I do to help with this process, and there are 3 basic tools that you can use, and I'll cover that. Another thing that we recommend is enable 2-factor authentication on all web accounts where it's offered. So most bank sites now offer 2-factor authentication, and 2-factor authentication is where you need your login and password, and you need another way to authenticate. Usually it's your phone, where you get a text, or it's an app on a phone. Microsoft has an authenticator app where a lot of sites will allow you to look at that and key in the number that's current. And it really does secure. It doesn't rely on the fact that your password and email address are unique. So if you're uncertain how important it is to act on this information, let us know. We'll help you for free to find out what passwords have been compromised. And let me tell you, if you're like me, the day I saw what used to be my normal password exposed on the internet, I reacted in a way that's completely different than when it was just theoretical knowledge. Oh my gosh, no kidding. They have my password. So it's not a shame. Likely you didn't make a mistake to have your password compromised. You probably put your email address and password on a site, whether it's Target or Anthem or wherever, and they were hacked and you were exposed. So I want to say the most useful thing you can do is make the leap and decide to use a password manager. So there are other choices, but I'm going to dive into that now. So I'm going to demonstrate 3 different methods for password storage. The one that really doesn't work for any of us, I don't know anybody who can keep these in their head or avoid some manner of writing them down, but there are all kinds of problems associated with password management. So there are several products. The ones that I'm going to mention are LastPass and Dashlane, both very, very well reviewed. I used to use Dashlane. I remember the day that I signed up for Dashlane. I was reading a security article in a newspaper, and the writer was a tech writer, and the beginning of the article said, this is how the article started, she said, "Today I started using Dashlane." I thought, what's Dashlane? That's an interesting start to an article. And she went on to describe she'd been on a plane, she was writing a security article, walking off the plane, guy behind her taps her on her shoulder and says, "You're a security tech writer, aren't you?" And she said, "How did you know that?" And he said, "I was watching everything you were typing." Really? Yes, really. In Starbucks, any place around public Wi-Fi, the tools are free and they're very easy. I've seen demonstrations of the very inexpensive and easy way somebody can walk into a Starbucks with a backpack that's got a laptop running, and they can be watching your typing on their screen. So public Wi-Fi is not secure. So where Dashlane entered, she said in her article, "So I quickly researched the best available products out there. I selected Dashlane, and that's what I use." Well, that same day, I did that same thing. I did a quick research. Dashlane seemed good to me. I used it, and I used it for a year or so. I've now converted to LastPass. LastPass is not better. They're both fine products. LastPass is more widely used because there's a free version that's really, really good. So I don't use the free version, but the free version is really, really good. So I'm going to give you a bit of information and a short demonstration about how this works. So one thing that a password manager does is it encrypts traffic. If you log in through your password manager, then your traffic is secure. And we'll talk about public Wi-Fi in a second. Public Wi-Fi is not secure. If you're keying in a password and you're on public Wi-Fi, somebody could very easily be watching and capturing that password and wherever else you logged in. So one of the good things about a password manager, these, and there are others, they auto-synchronize. You won't believe how easy this is. Some of you may use password managers today. That's great. Which one you use really doesn't matter. But when I am on my PC and I add a new password or I change a password, then I'm on my laptop, or I don't use a Mac frequently, but I have one, Android tablet, iPhones, iPads. When you authenticate into your password manager, anything you changed over here automatically shows up here and vice versa. So wherever you are, you have access to your stored passwords. So another thing that they do is they'll autofill passwords for you so you don't have to remember them. So LastPass in particular, there are 3 versions. LastPass Free, which has basically all the features of LastPass. It auto-synchronizes across your devices. It places really no significant limitations. The reason someone, in my opinion, might want to use the premium version, which is $2 a month or $24 a year, is it provides digital contingency. So what this means is, so my wife has free access to my passwords, but she doesn't care about them, she doesn't want them, but she has access, and if something were to happen to me, all she has to do is go to LastPass and all my passwords are there. And you can set this up such that if it's a really close person who you trust completely, then they can get immediate access. Otherwise, you can say, if I've been out of contact for 6 hours, 1 day, 3 days, then that person gets access to my account. So it's a $24 a year option that provides security that you will not pass into eternity with no access to your passwords. So LastPass Families, same thing, except for it provides for $6 a month, 6 separate accounts. So you, spouse, 4 other kids, however you want to divvy it up, and you can share certain things, like if you want to share your Netflix, you can share that. Everything else is separate. So you don't have access to theirs and they don't have access to yours. So this is one product. I'm going to do a quick demonstration of how this works. So I'm going to go to my browser. In this case, it's Chrome. And I'm going to click this button up here, which is access to my LastPass. Open my vault. So here are the sites. I can have these listed in alphabetic order. In this case, it's by most recently accessed. So I'm going to log into Adobe. So I have an account with Adobe, and it has logged me in, and it knows my picture. It knows what's available to me. I didn't have to really do anything. So I can pick any one of these accounts, and it will log me in. There are sometimes I have to make one more keystroke to tell it to use the 5 multiple accounts with a certain organization, or I can search by name, and I can have folders where I have home passwords and work passwords. But the basic idea is, if I log into a site, right now, if I went to a place where I didn't have an account and I logged in and I put in my email address, set up an account, gave it a password, LastPass would pop up a window and say, do you want to add this? So instead of storing it on my PC, I store it on LastPass. Now it's on my iPhone, it's on my iPad. So that's the basic idea. A password manager, once it's in there, it's really easy to use, and it's worth the pain. So what happens when you sign up? I've done this both with LastPass and Dashlane. I know several other products have this facility. If you've stored, you don't have to admit it out loud, if you've stored your password on your PC, so when you get a message that says, do you want to remember this password? You say yes. Then your browser, either Internet Explorer or Chrome or your Apple operating system, will remember that so that it doesn't prompt you again when you're on that PC. Well, when you first download LastPass, it says, would you like me to automatically gather all the passwords you already know? And it goes out and it finds all of the passwords that you've ever stored and starts with your account intact. But now it's stored in a place that's encrypted and safe. Okay, use a password manager. It's really easy and it helps you. It doesn't hurt you. You just need to make the decision to do it. Okay, storing passwords in an encrypted document, another option. So I do actually keep a copy of my backup passwords in this manner. So I'm going to go now to Windows Explorer on my PC, and I'm going to look on my personal OneDrive in my Home Documents folder, and there is a document here called Rave Fake Passwords for Demonstration. When I click on it, this is encrypted. And if these were live passwords, I would encrypt this with a really long password. And now I can call up this document, and because I stored it on the cloud, I can get to this from all my devices as well. So this is free. This is the poor man's way of doing it. And basically, it's just not as convenient. But So the idea here, I want to point out another tip, or it's one idea. So the question that many of us struggle with is, how in the heck do we make unique variations where we can remember them? So this is what I do with a certain, and these aren't real, but for Adobe, I don't tell it my email address. I say work email or my wife's email or my home email. So anybody who doesn't know those addresses would have to figure those out. And then I do something called normal 8. I have a set of 8, which doesn't actually have to be 8, but I never store that anyplace. I know that normal 8. And then I either say add this or cap the first letter or add this. And so everything, generally speaking, is a variation of my normal 8. And so I can give myself the keys to each of these passwords without ever really identifying my password anyplace. So using an encrypted document and then storing on the cloud in your Google Drive or your OneDrive or your Dropbox, as long as you encrypt it sufficiently, it's certainly much better than keeping it otherwise exposed. So I'm going to now go to one other example. And that is, if you use OneNote, which I do, this is actually a good thing to do that you can, the only idea is you really don't need to do this because you can use a password manager that's free that does a bit more than this. But so in OneNote, which I'm going to go to now, I have OneNote up at my desk all the time. When I'm going to Lowe's, I take my OneNote, and if I want to take a picture of a project I'm working on and put dimensions in there, I just store them right in my OneNote. Well, among the tabs I have in OneNote is this thing called encrypted tab. So if this were really the way I used it, this would say my passwords. And so now this is encrypted, so I have to enter a password to open up this tab, and voila, same idea. Website, email address, my fake password. So it's an alternative. The benefit of any of these approaches is that they travel with me. So no matter where I am, I have OneNote on my iPhone, my iPad, my PC, my laptop. I have my password manager there, and I can also get to my backup documents. Password manager, encrypted document, encrypted OneNote tab. Handwritten passwords just doesn't work. Some of you may be listening and saying, no, it works well for me. I suspect not. Okay, enough about passwords. Change them, make them unique. So let's talk about public Wi-Fi. On public Wi-Fi, never visit sites that require a login and password unless you're using a password manager, a VPN, or a trusted secure app. What is not secure is any Wi-Fi you can think of that isn't a privately secured network in a business or a home or a medical office. So Starbucks is not secure, Marriott, Delta, no matter what you pick, you're in public. The airport, not secure. Anybody can have a password cracker that is watching and gathering your keystrokes. So anybody who spends time in an airport and you've used public Wi-Fi, really, it's just a very, very insecure place. And if I wanted to steal a bunch of passwords, I'd go sit in an airport. So password hacks are common. So another thing that happens is people set up fake, free Wi-Fi. So they're banking on the presumed trust of the host. There is no Wi-Fi called Google Starbucks. The Wi-Fi that was set up called Trump Wi-Fi scammed 1,000 attendees it's been some years ago at the Republican and separately at the Democratic National Convention, where they captured login and passwords of somebody using Trump Wi-Fi that they thought, yeah, good, there's a protected Wi-Fi here. It wasn't. The scammer had set it up. Okay, so how do I know when I'm secure on Wi-Fi? I'm secure when I'm using an encrypted app. So if you have an app from Huntington or US Bank or I can't swear to Amazon, you presume that those folks who are providing login information with credit card, they know to make their app secure. And what that means is it's creating its own VPN from that app to the site which you're logging into, and that is secure. That's different than going to your web browser and keying in the name of that site. That is not secure. Using a password manager does the same thing as an app, and there's a separate VPN software that accomplishes the same thing. So VPN software, and there are some options that are free, there's some options that are chargeable. password manager, or trusted app. So a VPN creates, any of these create a VPN, and they create a private encrypted channel between you and one contact. So I have a link here for those of you who are interested in exploring a VPN. And PC Magazine is just one of a number of sources that rate these VPNs, and some of these are free, some of these are not. So the PowerPoint deck for today's webinar will also be available for each of you. So Scroggins Greer will make sure that the webinar recordings and PowerPoint decks and handouts are all published, so you will have them without needing to request them. So how to be safe on public Wi-Fi. One thing that's really important to know is cellular is safe. So turn off your Wi-Fi, log in at your heart's content. Cellular is safe. So as long as you're not on Wi-Fi, your traffic is encrypted. Who knew? Google searches, sure, why not? Do a Google search, no problem, but stop when you're prompted for a password. So you want to look at the best of this or whatever else you want to look up, go ahead, it's fine. Just don't use a password. So use a password manager, VPN, or a safe app. So today, what have we talked about? Careful of your passwords, change them and make them varied. Don't reuse between work and home. Use a password manager, enable two-factor authentication, and find out if your passwords have been compromised, or which will help anybody do it at no cost, or just change them anyway and you don't need to know. Use public Wi-Fi securely by using cellular or one of the three methods. So hopefully this is information that we've repeated enough that the idea is clear. You can manage your passwords easily. You need to take the time to do it. So we have been now through 4 webinars with a varied series of topics, and in summation, what we've talked about is how to secure your desktops, laptops, and portable devices to make sure you have antivirus and malware protection in place, that your patches are always up to date on your apps and browsers. Stay away from downloads. Always have a backup. It's really critical, even for a home PC where you don't think there's anything important. Well, you don't think there's anything important until your photos are gone, your tax returns are gone, and whatever else you thought was, quote, just my home stuff. Email security may be the most important topic of any of these. Learn how to evaluate emails, and again, you'll get a free link to this webinar. And consider a product like Advanced Threat Protection inside of Office 365, which, if you click on the wrong thing, sends it out and explodes it in a sandbox on the internet. And if it's bad, it returns a message saying, this is a malicious link, don't click this, or this is a malicious attachment, we're not going to pass it on. Information that's sensitive on the home or work PCs, if it's got protected information, encrypt it so a hacker couldn't steal it if they got in. And certainly when you're emailing, and make sure that you're using an encrypted protocol, you're encrypting the email or the attachments when you send them. Manage passwords carefully. Know if your PCs are safe. Here's where a PBSI service can come into play. It's very inexpensive to have your PCs monitored online, where alerts are issued if there's any security issue. It's a very, very useful idea. And if you're a medical office, it's required by HIPAA that you have some kind of alert process. So these things are available from other sources, whether you use PBSI or somebody else. Just highly recommend you have your PCs monitored. And continue to pay attention, heads up, security-wise. So we are finished now with content both today and in this series. And I want to thank each of you for your attention. Hope I haven't put you to sleep. And I want to thank Scroggins Greer, who recognized the importance of helping clients learn about the different aspects of security and what you can really do practically to help yourself.